Three. Tell us, what is your name?
Grace Peach,
And what year were you born?
1983.
Where are you from originally?
I grew up in Sciotoville here in Scioto County.
We asked you to come and speak with us about your experiences with the 9/11 tragedy. Could you tell us a little about that?
Sure. I was actually a freshman in college. I was a music education student at Capitol in Columbus. And I was walking into my 9 o'clock theory class, Theory 101, and I walked in and we had a TV up in the corner of our room. We hardly ever used it, but it was on that day and I thought it was strange. So as I was walking in, I happened to look up and there was this image of a building and it had a plane in it, and I did not quite understand what was going on, and I just stopped. Half of my class was already kind of down, sitting down, and I just stopped and watched because I couldn't quite understand what was happening. And I stood there. I mean, it felt like 20 minutes just looking, trying to understand what was going on. And after, what I was sure was about 2 minutes, somebody said, "Grace, please sit down, sit down." Okay, and so I went and sat down, and about the time I found my way into the chair, the second plane came, and I watched it as they were showing this first one. We watched the second one hit the Trade Center, and we watched the whole thing come down, and all of us just sat there in fear and not understanding, and it was just shock. And we had our professor he couldn't say or do anything. We just sat there and watched it happen and felt extremely powerless. After a few more minutes, he sent us back. He sent us back to our dorms, and so we were walking, and you heard all this buzz through the conservatory. Everybody was in the hallways talking, and I heard everything from we're at war, the world is ending, oh, by the way, they hit the Pentagon too. And it was just beyond my comprehension. That sort of thing just didn't happen. It never had. I'd never known anything like it. And a lot of people thought this is the end of the world as we know it. And in some senses, things have changed considerably, but I remember I was scared to death. I didn't know what to think. And when I got back to my dorm, we didn't have air conditioning in the dorms, and it was the old style building. So as I was walking down the hall, it was still hot outside. So everybody had their windows open and their doors open to let a breeze through, and everybody had the news on. So as you're walking down this hallway, you just get it from every door that you go by. And everybody was just sitting, just captivated and not able to get up and do anything else. I thought it was interesting because usually if you're dealing with college students, you're going to be dealing with people teasing and making light of a situation in order to deal with it, and I didn't see anything like that. It was just too grave of a situation to even have people reacting that way. And what's interesting to me, I've heard other people say that they thought it was an accident at first. The plane had crashed by accident, and I remember thinking how odd that didn't even occur to me. It was just this thing that I couldn't even process until much later. But that feeling of walking down the hallway and seeing every single girl on my hall just unable to deal with the situation, and hearing it from every single doorway that you walked by. I was all the way down at the end, so the whole hallway, and it was a feeling that I never expected to have to deal with. And the next day, we had a chapel service, and almost the whole college was there. And we had the professors speaking, and the students were allowed to, if they wanted to stand up and say something, they could. And I was so impressed when people did stand up. It wasn't anger. It wasn't, a lot of it was fear, but it wasn't the angry sort of fear. It was just fear for families, and but mostly it was, desiring peace and wanting to help whatever and whoever that we could. It was just a very interesting situation. I do remember one thing that happened that it almost broke my heart, actually. I'm from Scioto County. It's just a small little place in southern Ohio. Basically, the people that live here look like me. And I saw there's a lady that came into class on my campus, and I would see her when I was walking to class in the mornings, and I thought she was so pretty. She, I don't know where she was from, but she stood out to me because she wore the long clothing and not a full-fledged burqa with the shaped things, but she always wore a scarf on her head and was wrapped up and covered, and her sleeves always came down this far, and I just thought she was so pretty, and she looked so interesting to me, and I would see her going to class every day. And then I didn't see her after the attacks for 2 or 3 weeks. And then I finally saw her again, and she was in slacks and a short sleeve shirt, and her hair was in a bun, but it wasn't covered, and it just seemed so sad that she was so afraid that she couldn't be herself. And I don't know, I just felt awful about that, because I know for me, I wouldn't have thought any different, but I know there are people that would, and I just hated that she had to be so afraid and change something that obviously was important to her. But it's just such a shame. But even years later, you still kind of hear about ripples. After I graduated, I had a friend, she grew up in Queens. She lived there, and she worked at a gym at that time, and she was supposed to go in for work that day. And she went in that evening, and she was Indian. Her family's from India, and people stopped her at the door and wanted to know what she was doing there, why she was there, what she wanted. And she had to explain, I work here, I come here every day. And it's just such an interesting thing how the world can change so quickly. It just shocked me that so much can change in a day's time.
How else has it changed your outlook in life?
I think it changed everyone my age, because we remember it clearly enough and we understood it well enough for it to affect us really profoundly. And people a little older than me have dealt with big traumatic issues before, and people a little younger than me didn't really necessarily understand all that was going on. But I think the age that was 20-something at the time, that was our first understanding of our vulnerability. Nothing like that had ever happened. Not here. It's over there. It can't bother us. It won't bother us. Just the trip out of the ivory tower, I think, was quite a shock to all of us. And I know it's changed how I think, because right after that, that's when the economy kind of took a turn for the uglier, and I don't think of anything as sure anymore. I used to think of certain things, they weren't going to change. There might be small changes, but certain things you understood would always be this way. But that's not how I view things anymore. Nothing is certain. Nothing is completely unchangeable. I see that a lot in people my age. Our jobs are not sure. There's nothing that says we're going to retire from where we start to work the way you would have in the 50s or 60s. We don't have that expectation. We don't have the expectation that we're going to be able to live in the same places where we grew up or where we're living now or what have you. It's just a generation of uncertainty. None of us are sure what's coming next. But I don't know, for me, it's a very different way of viewing the world, and not altogether bad, I don't think, because it isn't a constant fear, but it does make you be more careful. I think that's the biggest change that I've seen in me.